Hello and welcome back to Seaside Garage. This is where I left the repair on the Saab 900 Turbo in the previous video. I have welded in a repair piece down here. Then I had to wait on paint to dry and sealer to dry and all that before I could continue on it. And that is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to continue on fixing the rest of this so we can close it up. So the main thing is fitment when doing stuff like this. A good fitment will be a nice repair. And it's also the difficult bit in my opinion to get the fitment right. But this is the repair piece that I'm going to use. But the metal is already pretty good up here. So I'm not going to go all the way up there. But what I'm going to do is to cut this down roughly to the size. And then use this to scrape on the rear and cut that into the piece of this repair panel. So let's do that. So I'm going to cut this to begin with. So now with the piece in roughly the right shape, I'm going to use the scraper to mark it up. And I actually did mess it up a little bit right here, but it's not a problem because I can just weld that up. But this is the scrape marks that I now can cut from. But I want to leave a little gap between this panel and the new repair panel to have something to weld on and to have something to let it expand on. So if I cut it too tight, it will just warp extremely much and be a weak weld also. So I'm going to cut it slightly above the scrape line, but just slightly. There's a couple of spot welds that I would like to drill out of this. Then I'm going to clean up the surface and down here. And let's see how the fitment is. Yeah, that's pretty decent. So I'm just going to clean up the surface and then get ready to weld. This is it. I'm satisfied with the fitment other than right here, which was an error. I don't really know what happened, to be honest, but anyway. And also the wave form down here doesn't really fit the panel in there because sometimes repair panels is just not the correct shape of the car because there are so many variables, I think. So at least these two up here will be a little bit difficult to weld up nicely. But it will be possible though, so it will be okay. I need to clean up this area. I'm going to give all the clean metal some zinc primer that is a weld-through primer, because right here I'm going to weld, of course, and it won't be possible to paint it afterwards. So I'm going to do that now, and then also mark out a couple of spot welds on that part of it, like there and there, and then drill them out also. And then just fit it. Nice and tight. Just gonna have to cut the opening a little bit bigger right there. And this is where one of these comes in really handy because I can cut it and leave pretty much the perfect space for the weld. Yeah, as mentioned, the fitment over here is pretty horrible, but the rest of it I like pretty much. So I'm gonna start welding, applying it into place along the way. Hopefully it will end up all right. That's a pretty good beginning. I'm just going to weld it up here and then attach it to the flange down here afterwards. You can see the fitment isn't perfect down here, but there's nothing really I can do about that because it's the shape of the car. And yeah, it's just the way it is. I have to follow this hole at least because otherwise the drive shaft won't fit. That's the most important bit. So I'm going to continue on welding up these areas. Like that. It turned out pretty horrible over here. Next up I'm going to grind the welds down and then re-weld the areas that I missed, like there and there and there. So that's what I'm going to do now. There we go. I need to re-weld a couple of places and then start to weld the spot welds. And to do that I will have to clamp it tightly to get it into the actual shape. Got a little fire. Compressed air is a good thing to have, especially when the fire is hard to get at. There we go. That was the spot welds done. I just need to re-weld the areas that I missed. Oh, I missed these two also, but I'm gonna do this first. And then I'm going to grind all this up. So this is the end result. I'm not going to do anything else than this. I could make it more flush, but it is pretty nice. All the swirl marks is just a grind stone. But with this rust repair done, I need to paint this, but before doing that I will fix the rest that I am going to fix in this wheel arch at this moment, and that is the rust over here. I want to fix that, and that is all I'm gonna do in this video, at least, because there is also some rust up there. It's hard to see, but I might end up putting this car on my auto whip to fix some rust in there, and that would be way easier to do on the auto whip to get the car on the side. And then it would also be easier to fix that up there. So this is all I'm going to do now, and then we'll return to this wheel arch later on. But this one needs fixing, and I can just fix it now. What I want to do is to just cut away the thick metal around there and then see what's what. And this is the reason why it rusts. Crap. Mud in here keeps everything moist. And with a very dirty finger, I'm gonna trace the outline of the repair with my finger. And then I'm gonna cut this piece out. But remember, we need to make this repair piece slightly smaller than the hole. Otherwise, we don't really have any place to weld and for the heat to expand and all that. So I'm just gonna cut it a millimeter, or actually the thickness of the welding wire smaller than what it was supposed to be, like this, and then transfer this to a piece of metal. I like to keep all the cuts that I have when I make repair panels, because there is a lot of pieces that you could just throw out, but I just keep them, and then sometimes it's just the perfect fitment for one of those small repairs. Could this be it? Oh, that's close. Then I'm just gonna trace the outline. And then cut that piece. And now this piece should fit pretty snugly in here. And that's not bad. I'm just gonna mark out the spots where I want a couple of. And then I also want to paint the backside with some paint before welding it in. Okay, so by using a magnet, I can hold the repair panel in the right place, like so, and then tack it in place. All there is left to do today is to paint it with some good thick high zinc rust primer. And to be honest, the very best thing to do would be to use epoxy primer. I don't use that very often because it's difficult and expensive. You have to mix it. It is quite expensive, and it's also very unhealthy. So I use the other stuff that is not as good, but pretty close to. This is some high zinc rust primer. It needs a cover layer on it. So tomorrow I'm gonna give it a quick coat of black cover paint on it. And then that repair should be done. And in the end, when the paint is completely dry, I'm gonna fill the cavities with some kind of oily substance that will keep protecting it for a long time. So this is it, the repair in the inner wheel arch on the Saab 900 is done. At least this part of it. There's still some up there as mentioned, but I will take a look at that at a later stage where I most likely have this car flipped on its side, which will make it a lot easier to do that and to do the rust at the jacking point, and also to possibly paint the roof. I am back to thinking it's a better plan for me because I like to do stuff myself. Even though it rarely becomes perfect, I just like the fact of doing stuff myself. So I'm actually back at thinking I'm gonna paint this car myself in stages. I'm gonna start with the roof, and if the roof turns out fine, then I can do the bonnet and the rear hatch, and then the doors and the rest of the car at least. But let's see. There's a lot of work needed to be done before that. But this repair was was important to get done because I think it's some of the worst rust. I might be overlooking something, but it seemed to be the worst. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.